The world is full of urban legends, remarkable stories that spread like viruses around the planet, mutating and evolving until no one can remember which ones are true and which ones are urban legends. In this episode called Reap What You Sow, we show you 3 stories all linked by bad decisions leading to big regrets. First up, the story of a Florida man who gets a text message from beyond the grave. Then, a young woman's white lie changes her life forever. And finally, a Chicago lawyer takes a leap of faith with an online romance. Watch all 3 stories and decide which urban legends are true and which ones are false. Find out if you guessed right at the end of the show. First, it's a story we like to call, Where Are You? Florida detective Danny Smith has a reputation for cracking tough cases, but there is one that almost cracked him.
This is up there with one of the top 3 or 4 cases that I'll remember forever.
The case would put Danny's back to the wall.
We had one shot, we knew we had one shot.
And ultimately, force him to gamble everything on a risky plan.
I would say that I gave this a 2% chance of working.
It all began in 2009 in Miramar, Florida. It was a normal day until an officer walked into Danny's office with a big problem. When a woman named Lisa Spence had been missing for a week.
Lisa was a very hardworking person. She had 2 jobs down here. She's the mother of a beautiful daughter, beautiful son.
Had Lisa run off, or had something more sinister happened? Danny seeks answers from her boyfriend, Paul Edwards.
He actually offered to voluntarily come back to our police department, and we interviewed him.
Worried about her, too. When was the last time you spoke with her?
Edwards tells Danny that Lisa broke up with him, and he hasn't heard from her since. But something isn't right.
She never showed up to work. She still has a paycheck there. She didn't call her daughter. We felt that if she's still alive, we need to find her.
Time is incredibly sensitive in missing person cases, and the clock is ticking for Danny.
Thank you.
He obtains Lisa's cell phone records and discovers in the days after she was reported missing, she sent out a string of text messages to friends and family in Trinidad.
You received a text from her.
We contacted those people, and it was funny because they said, we never get a text message from Lisa. She doesn't text.
Really?
Lisa appears to be alive.
We'll be in touch.
She would text and say, I am in Jacksonville right now, and I'll give you guys a call when I have service on my cell phone.
But information from cell phone towers tells another story. None of the texts were sent from Jacksonville. They were all sent from Miramar, and the texts say something else.
Or she'll make comments like, Paul and I aren't together anymore, but he really treated me well. He was good to me.
Why would Lisa break up with her boyfriend, then send out strange text messages? Danny has a hunch.
We pulled the records of her boyfriend, and we were able to see that it's weird. Every time her phone would text, his phone would also be in the same area.
But where is Lisa? Danny's convinced Paul is somehow involved in her disappearance.
Mr. Edwards.
And gets a search warrant for his house, but finds nothing.
Nothing.
What do you mean you got nothing?
Not a thing.
Unfortunately, not a whole lot was found.
Then, Paul stops cooperating with the police.
It was very frustrating for us. We thought we were on the right track. We felt that we had a good suspect. We were still hoping that she would show up and be fine, but as the days and months went by, it looked like it was not going to happen.
Police speculate that Lisa is most likely dead. And even though they suspect Paul is responsible, they can't prove it. They've hit a dead end. That's when Danny gets a crazy idea.
Right. Get in here.
It was something that no one in our entire homicide unit had done before.
Danny makes a clone of Lisa's cell phone number. He plans to turn the tables on Paul and send him a text message from Lisa. There's just one problem with Danny's idea.
We called a lot of her family and friends. We asked them, how does she speak? How does she text? And they said, I'm telling you, she doesn't text.
The whole investigation now rests on coming up with the right text message.
So this is it?
That's it.
What are we gonna text this guy?
About, where are you?
How about this?
They settle on a message to send from the cloned phone.
We purposely misspelled it, so it looked like maybe somebody was texting in a hurry. Okay, the text said, just wait till I got better.
If Paul really has killed Lisa, how will he react when he receives a text message from beyond the grave?
If it were me, if I were in those shoes, I would be freaked out.
Whatever Edwards is thinking, he's clearly creeped out.
Looks like it worked.
He leaves the house quickly, but where is he going?
He drove to a few different places. He did a lot of aimless driving, in my opinion.
Police follow at a careful distance as Paul takes them on a wild goose chase.
And he then decided to go to the area where I think he set out to go from the beginning.
After Edwards leaves the location, police move in. They search through the abandoned lot and make a grisly discovery.
A couple of our canine human remains detection dogs alerted us to a barrel.
Inside, they discover the body of Lisa Spence. It seems a text message from Lisa freaked out Edwards so much, he had to make sure her body was where he left it.
I think ironic is a perfect word to describe the case. He used Lisa's cell phone to try to throw family members and even police off the scent. And ultimately, the cell phone is what got him.
A text message from beyond the grave leads police to the body and the murderer. But did it really happen? You'll have to wait to the end of the show to find out. But before then, take a look at this mini-myth. Mini-myth number 667. Politeness doesn't pay. In 1987, some polite Chinese bank robbers were compelled to send a thank you note to the bank they'd recently robbed. Careful to use gloves, they were confident there was no way their letter could lead the police to them. But 5 years later, the crooks weren't thanking anyone. DNA profiling became more widespread, and the cops were able to bust them with the saliva they'd left on the envelope. Was it true or false? It was totally fake. There are many popular stories about truly stupid things crooks do that get them caught. This is not one of them. On Urban Legends, we show you 3 stories. You have to decide which ones really happened and which ones are merely legends. So far, you've seen the story of Paul Edwards, who was nabbed after thinking he got a text message from the girlfriend he murdered. But is it true or false? Find out at the end of the show. Now it's time for our next story. It's called Something's Afoot. Helen Smith is one determined young woman. She's never backed down from anything. Certainly not the terrifying nightmare she couldn't wake up from 6 years ago.
Realizing that this isn't a dream, this is for real. What am I gonna do now?
The story began in Buffalo, New York, during the summer of 2004, when Helen Smith was scheduled for a routine bunion removal.
It was, you know, a very simple procedure, so there were no complications that we needed to worry about.
As usual, the doctors are running behind schedule.
It was a really long wait, and I had to use the washroom.
Helen doesn't want to leave in case they come for her. But soon, she can't take it anymore. When she gets there, it's occupied. But things are desperate.
So I decided to use the disabled wheelchair washroom instead.
Using the wheelchair washroom is not something Helen would normally do. But this is an emergency.
I figured I could deke in and out and use the washroom real quick.
Helen gets there just in time, or so she thinks.
At that point in time, I thought I got busted for using the disability washroom. And I'm caught completely off guard, and she's asking me all these questions. Are you okay? The alarm sounded.
Yeah.
Helen realizes she accidentally pulled the alarm cord while trying to flush the toilet.
Sorry.
And now she's on the spot.
Where's your wheelchair? Oh.
Flustered, Helen tells what will turn out to be the most important lie of her life.
I lied and came up with some story that a nurse took my wheelchair and just never returned.
The nurse takes Helen for her word and rushes off to locate another wheelchair.
She asked me what my name was, and I told her Helen Smith. And she puts me in a wheelchair, and so I thought, oh, good, finally, my surgery's coming. I don't have to wait any longer.
Helen wishes her bunion a fond farewell as the nurse hastily preps her for her surgery.
And they wheeled me down the hallway and told me that I'm on my way to surgery, and then that's the last thing I remember.
When Helen comes around, her life is changed forever.
I was very confused as to what was going on. You could tell the people in the room were concerned about something. Things were not right.
What's wrong?
I'm deeply sorry. There was an accident.
It didn't sink in until I actually pulled the blanket off my leg and realized that they had amputated my left foot. You know, I'm thinking, how can this be happening? I didn't know what I was gonna do.
The facts are terrifying. When Helen was found in the wheelchair washroom, she was mistaken for another patient, also called Helen Smith. That Helen Smith, though, was scheduled for foot amputation. Horrifically, the mistake is realized too late.
You know, how can this happen? How can you make that mistake?
For Helen, it was a simple lie that changed her life forever. But she's not gonna let it get the best of her.
The one thing that gets me through it today is determination to not let anything stop me.
So did you believe this story of a young woman brought down by karmic forces after using the disabled washroom? Or were we pulling your leg? Find out at the end of the show. But before then, take a look at this mini-myth. Mini-myth number 189. Number one cause of death. After a night drinking in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Sean Montero offered to drive his friends home, but stuck in traffic, Montero's full bladder reached its limit. Putting the car in park, he hopped over the divider and disappeared. When he didn't return after a few minutes, his buddies got out and looked over, only to discover it was guarding a 20-meter drop into a crevice, which Montero had plummeted down to his death. So is that a true toilet tragedy? It was indeed true, and amazingly happened at the same spot where a highway patrolman had died just a few years earlier. On Urban Legends, we show you 3 incredible stories. Your job is to sort the terrifically true from the farcically false. So far, you've seen the tale of Paul Edwards, who thought he'd gotten a text from his murdered girlfriend and led the police directly to her body. And the story of Helen Smith, whose foot was amputated after she was mistaken for another patient of the same name. But which of these stories are the real thing? All will be revealed at the end of the show. In the meantime, watch our final story. We've named it Writing on the Wall. Victor Kostelecki knows that life is sometimes stranger than fiction. There was a time when he was part of a plot so convoluted,
Let's drink to that.
it seemed like something out of a novel.
I had no clue. I didn't put two and two together.
Patterson? Yeah, I had it.
Back in 2004, Victor was a newly minted Chicago lawyer with little time for a social life.
I had just finished my articling, just been called up to the bar, and I was working crazy hours.
Other than a few work buddies, most of Victor's social life was lived online. That's where Carla first entered his life.
She sent me a friend request, and I couldn't place her.
Victor is cautious about his privacy and doesn't usually add people he doesn't know.
She was really good looking. She was kind of my type, so I just felt a little optimistic, I guess, and succumbed to a moment of weakness.
But this time, he makes an exception. Much to Victor's surprise, he and Carla hit it off right away.
She mentioned that she was a romance novelist, and she asked me if I would mind if she would use me for ideas for her next book. Every few days, she would send me whatever she was working on that included me.
The two grow closer as Victor continues to help Carla build her character. Victor has been working up the nerve to ask her out, but she beats him to it.
She said she'd really love to get together and meet me, and of course, that's what I was hoping for.
When he finally meets Carla 1 week later, he isn't disappointed.
I hesitate to say love at first sight, but there was kind of a spark there.
Cheers.
She laughed at my jokes even when I thought they weren't funny. Yeah, she seemed to like me.
Victor couldn't have hoped for a better night.
I asked her to come up to the room for a nightcap, and she agreed. Especially after she told me that she was Novelist, I told myself, don't put any expectations on it. But she ended up staying.
As far as Victor is concerned, the weekend is a great success.
I really thought that we were hitting it off, and I was starting to let myself hope a little bit more.
Sitting across from you.
We're sorry, the number you've reached is not in service.
But a week later, Victor's hot romance goes suspiciously cold.
I felt like a dummy. I felt like I'd been played, like she was just mining me for her book.
As Victor nurses a broken heart, he has no idea what's about to unravel.
This young family shows up in the house, and they're demanding why I'm still there.
Yeah, you were supposed to have left like a few days ago.
You must have made a mistake. You must be the wrong address. And they kept insisting, no, this is the house we saw. We know, we've been here.
We've already paid in full.
Mystified, Victor calls the police, expecting the authorities will convince the couple they are wrong.
I was shocked to find out that they had legal title to my house.
Call them, call the bank manager.
Victor is floored.
This settled immediately.
His house has been sold right out from under him.
I was just shocked at what had happened.
He's become the hapless victim of an elaborate scam.
In the last year alone, we have had a 30% increase of victims being targeted on social networking sites. Carla was Carl Martin. Carl targeted Victor because they had so many physical characteristics in common.
First, Carl created Carla's profile to gain access to Victor's personal information. Then, a high-class call girl executed stage 2 of his cunning plan. She made a copy of his house keys.
The woman that Victor met at the hotel room was hired by Carl to pose as a love interest, when in fact they were working together.
When Victor went to work, Carl used the duplicate key to steal his documents.
He got my passport, and he opened a bank account with it.
Oh, well, you can't go wrong with that.
And turns out the reason he had picked me was because we looked alike. So he had no problems opening up a bank account in my name.
With his long working hours, it was easy for Carl to put Victor's house up for sale without his knowledge.
Now he lists the house at a rock-bottom price for cash. He transfers the money from the sale to the private account in the Cayman Islands.
Carl was already a wanted man, but with the stolen passport, he had no problem leaving the country.
They don't know what happened to the money, so I have to absorb that.
Victor's loneliness made him vulnerable to a classic con. But it was his uncanny likeness to Carl that made him the perfect prey. So did an illicit rendezvous leave Victor homeless? Or did we just pull a major con on you? It's time to reveal the truth about our 3 incredible stories. First up, it's the story of Paul Edwards, who led the police to the body of his dead girlfriend after they sent him a text message pretending to be her. But is it fact or fiction?
I'm Detective Danny Smith with the Miramar Police Department, and this is a true story.
Miramar police didn't only catch their suspect, they got an award for technique. Next, it's the tale of Helen Smith and the hospital mix-up that led to the loss of her foot. But did it happen?
I'm still getting used to my prosthetic, but this is not how I lost my foot. This is not a true story.
This story is totally fake, but there are horrifying tales of this sort of thing circulating, some of them even true. Which leaves the story of Victor Kostelecki and the elaborate con which left him with a gaping hole in his heart and his assets. But is it true?
Carl Martin stole my identity, but I stole Victor Kostelecki's identity. This story is a scam.
This story is fake, but online identity theft is a common fodder for urban legends. That's the end of our episode called Reap What You Sow. Were you able to separate the righteously right from the ridiculously wrong? Don't worry if you couldn't. You'll get another chance to separate fact from fiction in the next installment of Urban Legends.